Hello, everyone. Welcome to chapter 269 on my RLDR Custom Creations YouTube channel. It is the weekly edition, and the school year is just around the corner. And I'm going to put my teacher hat back on today and show you something. So, if you want to see what that is, all you need to do is stay tuned. Yes, school is fast approaching in our neck of the woods here. And even though I've been out of the system for 3 years now, it's still, you still feel in August you need to get going again. So, and I've been feeling that. And I've come up with another idea that actually I wished I would have had while I was still teaching. It would have tied in really nicely with the safety package that I had developed for each tool. My hope was always to shoot a series of video to go with each tool, so that way my kids could, do the safety. But if I was juggling, if I had welders out in the shop and I didn't have time to do, say, the table saw demo with them right away, I would have liked to have something that they could have watched. So that could have integrated that, and it would have allowed me some flexibility as a teacher to juggle the other groups I had. Now, maybe you don't have that situation. I'm not sure. Um, I'm directing this series of videos, and yes, there is going to be more than one. We are going to start with the table saw today, but I'm going to go through most of the common tools in a woodworking shop, and then we'll maybe see maybe a little bit of welding. I'm not sure yet. I know these videos don't go over really well as far as viewership goes, but I feel a duty to do this. I've talked to a few teachers, shop teachers, and some of them are other teachers like social studies, you know, English, math, or whatever. They don't really have training to be in the shop, and yeah, maybe they've developed some of their own skills, and that's great. But to learn how to teach tools to kids in a proper manner takes some time. And there was really very little to guide me through it when I went through it. But I got to the point where I was quite comfortable with the methods I was showing. So I thought what I would do is start passing those on. Now, these videos target really two groups. First of all, yes, it's a very blatant um, attempt to talk to industrial arts teachers in my area here who aren't getting these classes anymore. And they're learning on their own, to their credit. But I can maybe help a little bit and make things a bit easier. The other group that this is for people who simply would like to learn to use tools safely. So I'm going to present what I've done in the class for 30 years with students. I shouldn't say 30 years. I didn't come up with this right away. This was a bit of a process, and but it's one that I took very seriously. So what I'm going to do for you today is, first of all, we're going to talk about some of the things regarding safety that are initially in the setup. And then I'm going to make a rip and a cross cut for you, and that's going to be it. So my hope is, and I shouldn't even say this because I probably won't hit it, I'd like to have the content part of this video be 15, 20 minutes. Because if you're using it as resource in a classroom, that's all the attention you're going to get. So students like things to happen. They like things to move. They don't want to listen to a bunch of jabber like I'm doing now. So anyway, I'm going to set up the camera a little bit different, and we're going to get started. Well, I'd hope to be able to be in frame like I was talking to you, but it's not going to work out. What I have to show you is far more important than you seeing my face. The first thing that you need to be aware of when you're setting up your table saw safely is that the cast iron top needs to be properly aligned with the blade. Now, what that means is the blade should be perfectly parallel to the miter slot. Okay, there are lots of videos on how to do that, and if you want me to shoot one, just leave it in the comments. But basically, in most cases, there's 4 bolts, one there, one there, one there, one there, and these are the bolts that hold the cast iron top onto the sheet metal base, to the cabinet saw. So you'd loosen them, and then you tilt this top till this is parallel, and then you retighten the bolts. This adjustment shouldn't need to be done very often. I would say, in fact, if you're careful with your equipment, once it's done initially, like say you got a new saw stop and you set it up the way they say in the book, once that's done, I think you can pretty much use it a long time without having to do it again. It's a pretty arbitrary or firm setup. That's number one. That's quite important. The next thing is the guard. Yes, even with a saw stop, you absolutely need to use the guard. Saw stop is a great technology. I love the saws when I worked with them in the school division, but they're not an absolute protection. Like kickback and other things can still get you even if you have a saw stop table saw. So the guard is really, really important. And it's important with the guard that it line up. Hopefully you can see this, that it line up so that the kerf is split kind of by the splitter, which you should have anyway. And then it goes through. If you've got the splitter part of the guard too close to the fence or too far away and otherwise misaligned, it is going to give you problems with your cut. It's either going to make it really, really hard to push through or hard to keep against the fence. And both of those things are bad when you're trying to be safe. Okay, so we got the guard, we got it in place. Make sure it works properly. The whole debate whether you need to see the piece when you're cutting, I just don't believe that. I think your attention should be elsewhere, and I'll show you that when I start cutting. Okay, the other thing that's really important is aligning the fence to the blade as well. You want that to be the same distance. Now, there are some people in the old days, especially with the fences that clamped on both rails on the saw, that you wanted it to open up a little bit as you went past the blade. I think most saws that I've seen, their setup manuals, they're recommending this is parallel. So, and if you decide you want it open a little bit, I would do that very, very little, like probably maybe at the most a 1/16 of an inch. But I would set it parallel and then see what happens. Okay, so those are things that need to be done. Also, make sure your blade is sharp and in good shape. I like the 50-tooth combination blade. I know that's a little out of style now, but I still like that blade. And when you're getting your saw set up, this is something that more directly affects each individual cut. But a lot of times you're in a shop, and let's say you're cutting 3/4 inch board. In my opinion, the lower gullets, the gullets that have the least depth. Okay, those little U-shaped things between the teeth, those little U-shaped things between the teeth, those are the gullets. I'm signing in midair here. Yeah, and I would recommend that the blade be about the height to clear that smallest gullet. Now, if you need a measurement for that, I would say 1/4 to 3/8 or 6 to 8, 9 millimeters if you're metric. The whole issue of blade height is a lot more complicated than just that. But for safety, for in a school shop, that's what I would do. And normally, if you're all doing a similar project, you're working with similar stock, sometimes you can set that and it'll stay that way for the whole day because everybody's cutting 3/4 inch stock. So that's another major important thing. And keeping the area on the saw and around the saw clean. That's important too. And that's one thing where I fall down sometimes. I don't keep things as clean as I should. But anything on the saw deck, you want not to be there. You want to make sure that that's removed because things can vibrate and cause safety problems. And last but not least, I really like the SawStop table saw. I do. I'm a fan. It isn't just the technology is good. I found it to be a very good saw, but you can have a similar level of safety if you learn to use push sticks properly. And that's probably my biggest concern with people using a saw. They're not spacing the blade to their hand properly. And I have experience with this. I've been in an accident, as you probably noticed as I shot this video, that yeah, and I can tell you, and maybe what I'll do is shoot a video about that sometime because that was an experience. So anyway, the push sticks are really important. And I think now what we're going to do is we're going to set up to do a ripping cut. That's cutting this piece this way along the grain. Okay, let's get that set up. Okay, and now it's go time. It's time to actually make that cut. There's still a couple of little things that you need to be aware of. First of all, do you have your proper PPE, personal protective equipment? Had to think about that. Do you have everything on that your shop is requiring of you? When I ran our school shop, students wore a face shield when they ran the table saw. So be aware, your instructor will tell you what proper protocol is. Follow that. Make sure you're prepared before you start the switch. Before you press the button, make sure you're ready. The next thing that I would say is your push sticks. Now, I had a technique that I called palming my push sticks. And I would tell students that even with my modified right hand, I can still hold the board and the push sticks at the same time. So that way you're ready for them. You know, when you need them, they're in your hands. If they're at the next tool and you have to shut the saw off, hopefully you think of that. Don't leave the table saw don't leave the table saw with the saw running. I've seen people do that. It's really dangerous. But the push sticks are in your hands, so they're ready. Then we're going to set those down a little bit, set the fence, lift the lever, set it to the measurement you'd like to cut. That looks about right. Now there is a technique for cutting when you get the fence too close to the blade, but I'm not going to show you that in this video. This is a large topic. We could spend hours on table saw. Okay, so then what you would do, I'm not sure how your class runs, but when I run a class, this is the point where the student needs to ask me for permission to use a saw. Okay, so I'm going to say, yes, go ahead. When you're standing at the saw, you never stand directly behind the blade. Absolutely never. In fact, with any tool where there's a possibility of something coming back at you, you never stand directly in the line of fire. Always off to one side. In this case, I'm going to stand just off to the left, and I've got permission. The fence is set. It's locked. I have my push sticks in my hands, my PPE on, and I'm ready to go. And I'm going to start the saw. Okay, we're going to make a cut. Okay, hold that thought. Plug it in. Yes, I unplugged it to show you this stuff, and then I forgot to plug it in. Okay, now we're going to go, and away we go. make sure that the piece is tight to the fence. That's what you watch when you cut. There you go. Wait till the saw stops. Now, I'm going to tell you a little thing that happened during this cut. As I pushed through, I felt a little more resistance. And I wouldn't have to admit it to you because you won't notice it in the video. But what could potentially be wrong is when you get dust in the rail, it might lock the fence slightly differently too. So be aware of that. Okay, so that was a cross cut. Now I'm going to run through this and in slow motion again. Okay, so we started pushing, we pushed through. Okay, I don't know if you heard it well with the saw running, but you want to make sure that the piece is against the fence. That is important. Okay, and you're going to push it through. And I didn't do anything with this piece. Now, sometimes with a longer board, I might want to make sure that I'm holding it against the fence. But when you're doing that, don't put that pressure back where the blade is, because then you'll load the side of the blade, which is also a very bad thing to do. So I did nothing with this piece because it's small. So I'm just going to keep pushing here and the piece will come off and I just push it through. The other thing that's super, super important, you need to keep pushing until the piece is past the blade. Let me rephrase that again. You push, you maintain control of the piece until it's past the blade. And then you may as well just push it straight through. Get it away from the blade area altogether. This piece here, this little guy that's on the offshoot side or offcut side, not a problem. Don't touch it. If it starts to vibrate and wiggle like it wants to come back at you, what you can do is take this other push stick and just clamp it down here so that if it does come back at you, it won't come back very hard. But I've never seen this come back unless you start playing with it. So we'll get rid of that. And that is a rip cut. A rip cut is cutting with the grain of the wood. So we cut it to width. Cross cut, which is what we'll do next, is cutting it to length. Okay, I'm going to change this a little bit and we'll be right back. All right, the next cut that I'm going to demonstrate for you today is the cross cut. Now, cross cut is just like it sounds. It's cutting across the grain, so it's cutting things to length. Now, with table saw, the cross cut can be a source of concern. When you cross cut with a table saw, especially say a piece like this. Now remember I'm showing you things on basic pieces. Yes, we can talk about sheet material and we can talk about all that stuff, but that's another video. This is just first two cuts, a rip and a cross cut to get you started. So yes, there are other things that I could be telling you, but we're going to confine it to the simplistic for this video. So cutting things to length, the only thing you need to have is a good miter gauge. Now this came with the table saw. It's not bad. It's okay for this. You can spend a lot more money and get fancier miter gauges, but most school shops probably won't have it. They'll have the one that came with their saw. And if you have a SawStop saw, that's a pretty good miter gauge. I liked it anyway. So you're fairly well set up. Now, there is one issue here that, especially with a guard like this one doesn't flip up nicely, although I could show that to you. I should show that to you. So I'm going to set it like that. I'm going to take my tape and my pencil, which is right here, and let's say that I want to cut this to 17 inches. No, let's cut 16 inches. Now, if this end is not square where you're measuring from, then you need to cut this square first and then flip it around and then measure and then cut again. But I'm not teaching you how to prepare stock in this video. I'm teaching you how to use table saw. So I'm just going to mark 16 inches. And then you line that up to your blade. Try not to touch the blade because the saw will be live. So please don't touch the blade when you're doing it. Line that cut up. And make sure your guard is on. That is important. And then you're going to go through the PPE inspection again. You're going to talk with your instructor. He's going to verify your setup. All those things that need to happen in your shop for you to successfully make a cut. They've now already happened. You've got permission from your instructor to cut. So away we go. And I'm standing out of the way again. Okay. Now, you've got the off cut on this side of the blade. That was maybe a little hard for you to see. But it's the same rules that applied with the rip. You don't have to do anything with the cross cut. It's going to stay there provided you don't make one really, 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 really serious error and bring the fence in. I've seen people do this. This is lethal. If you want kickback, you're going to get it. So if you would decide, okay, I need 15 3-inch pieces. Here, that's 3 inches is there. Okay, I got to lock it, and I'm going to cut them like this. I'm going to use the miter gauge and the fence. That is an absolute never, ever, ever do. You are going to introduce kickback into that. And I've seen pieces come off a saw at high velocity. You don't want that type of injury. And then once things start moving around, your hands stay on the piece. So even though this is more of a kickback issue, I would argue it could potentially become a dismemberment issue, especially if you're not using your blade guard. So anyway, please don't do that. You want the fence out of the game. That's where it goes, far away. And then you can make your cut safely like that. Just the miter gauge, nothing else. Now, like I said, there are other things that I could have shown you that, are maybe a little more. You'll run into them eventually. There may be a tad more advanced, but not much more. So chances are you'll run into it fairly soon. I could shoot another video, and I probably will. But this is just to get you started. Now, an alternative. One of the things that I think is that there are a lot of cuts that end up getting made on on the table saw that are just not table saw cuts. They're better tools for them. So if you're cutting a piece to length, especially like a 4-inch wide piece like this, head over to the sliding compound miter saw. You've got lots of length here. You can chop that up and you can see what you're doing. It's just a little nicer way to do it than this. I see some people trying to resaw on the table saw or trying to cut really small pieces. If you're cutting small pieces on the table saw, you're on the wrong tool. Head over to the bandsaw to cut that. That's where that cut belongs. So make sure that you're thinking. Students, don't just put your brain on hold. This is one class where you have to pay attention because you don't want your hand to look like that. Well, I hope that helped. I think what I'll do excuse me, in the future is shoot different increments. Maybe one day we do a dado head one, and one day we do cutting sheeting, things like that, that can get you more confident in the way you're teaching your table saw to your students or using it in your home shop. Because the last thing you want to do is have to call 911 and be treated because you had a kickback or a dismemberment issue. So, and yeah, I guess I'll leave it in. I showed a fairly good picture of my right hand, which I usually never do. This happened 40 years ago, and I got so used to covering up, it's just a habit now. But yeah, that was on a radial arm saw, and maybe someday I'll tell you about that. So yeah, safety is really important. I've gone through the whole thing of it. I used a tool somewhat inappropriately, although there were lots of injuries like that, and eventually there was a class action lawsuit brought against that manufacturer. No, it wasn't Ryobi, but in the end, who's responsible for your safety? You are. And students, this is where you need to listen to what you're being told, because your instructor has more experience than you do, and you need to be aware of what he's telling you or she's telling you. And if you're at home, you want to work safely. You want to have a fun hobby here, not one where you're seeing the local emergency wards. So anyway, with that in mind, if you'd like me to do more, please comment or put it in the comments below the video, and I will do more. I might do more anyway, because I'm always looking for content. And these are things that maybe won't do well as far as the algorithm goes, but I'm maybe a little bit in it for that, but mostly in it for just passing this stuff on, because in our province, they haven't been training shop teachers for a long time, and that leads to, I think problems. You want teachers that are capable and competent, and they want them to be able to pass that knowledge on to their young students who are trusting them to do things correctly. Okay, with that in mind, please like, share, and subscribe. I'd sure appreciate it. I'd like to get up to that 1,000 mark. That'd be great. And remember, for some lucky person, there'll be a guitar that they win at the 1,000 subscriber giveaway. And with that in mind, have a good rest of the week, and we will see you on the weekend edition. It won't be safety, I don't think. Something else.